Hi, I'm DraftKings analyst Geoff Ulrich, and this is the DKTV lineup review for Week 14 of the NFL season. If you're new to the lineup review, we're going to look at some Week 14 winners lineups from DraftKings big tournaments last week. We're going to break down these lineups and see what strategies and tips we can take to help us build better lineups in the future. First lineup we're going to look at this week, the Millionaire Maker, the big $3 Millionaire Maker winners lineup, a player by the name of The Brewster. A couple interesting points about this lineup right off the bat that we'll just break down. Both his running backs were 5% owned or less, so they were very contrarian. He also targeted three very high-priced wide receivers, Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, Odell Beckham, all over $6,500 in price. And then the most interesting thing to me, he used Doug Baldwin and Russell Wilson combo at quarterback and wide receiver. And this is the second time in 3 weeks that this combo has won the Millie Maker on DraftKings, which I think is really interesting. What I liked about this lineup, the first thing, he targeted weak secondaries who've been having trouble covering the wide receivers. He targeted Odell Beckham versus the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins have given up 9 touchdowns over the last 4 games to wide receivers. Targeted Brandon Marshall versus the Titans. They've also given up 9 touchdowns over their last 3 games to wide receivers. And he also targeted Doug Baldwin and Alshon Jeffrey against the Baltimore Ravens and the Washington Redskins. They've been giving it up a lot to the wide receiver position too. All of these teams, all these defenses that he targeted, they're in the bottom 10 of the league in terms of points given up to the wide receiver position. You can sort of use the OPRK rankings or the offense versus position rankings on DraftKings to help you identify these weak secondaries, help you make decisions about which wide receivers to use in the future. And just as a look-ahead play, Sammy Watkins next week versus the Washington Redskins. We just talked about how weak they are. I really like this for next week, but I really like the strategy that he employed. He targeted a lot of weak secondaries. The second play that I really like, he targeted some talented players that were coming off of bad games and that were going to be low-owned because of sort of what we call recency bias. So contrarian or low-owned plays, they can be really powerful plays in tournaments because you're getting low ownership. Not many people are going to be using them. Eddie Lacy, in this case, he was reinstated as starter this week. He had a really good matchup against the Cowboys, who haven't been great, I should say, at covering the running back position. And his low ownership was derived off of people, being scared about his bad games last week. So that was an interesting play. We know he can put up points in the Green Bay offense. It was a bit of a risky play, but given the fact that he was starting this week, I really like it. Isaiah Crowell, definitely the riskiest play of the bunch. He was extremely low owned, but he's very, very cheap, so only $3,400 in salary. He just needed 1 touchdown to really pay off this week, and he got that and more, obviously. Very risky, but you're still getting a player who's getting all of his goal line carries, and he was, had a good matchup against San Francisco, who's really got a weak defense. So I don't hate this play as a tournament play at all. And then Julius Thomas, he was low owned because Allen Robinson was coming off the big game. We know he can put up big games, big fantasy games because of his time in Denver. He's great at red zone, great at blocking out defenders. He was overshadowed by Allen Robinson, as I mentioned last week. Super low owned. I really like this play too. So looking ahead, next week, you got Brandon Cooks going up against the Lions on Monday Night Football. Cooks is coming off a disappointing game, but he's been really solid the last 4 or 5 weeks, and I really like the New Orleans offense at home, so I think that's a play you could target for sure. The last thing I really like about this lineup, he targeted a defense that was at home playing a much weaker quarterback and a much weaker team. So the San Diego Chargers, numerous injuries at wide receiver. Phillip Rivers has been struggling, as you can understand, with so many injuries on offense. The Chiefs had a very safe floor in this game. San Diego's very banged up. They weren't going to score much, and the Chiefs at home have been very, very solid lately. I really like the safe play on D. Next week, if you're looking for sort of a safe, solid play as well, New England's going to be at home versus Tennessee, who've really struggled against elite teams this year. So that's really good work on the Millie Maker lineup this week. Let's look at the $27 Gridiron winners lineup too. The player who won this week, name of Herbert H2. He won the $27 $1.5 million Gridiron. He used a similar type of play that we saw last week. He used the domination play. So he used a lot of Seahawks in his lineups. He used them 2 wide receivers. He used Doug Baldwin and Tyler Lockett. And then he used the Seahawks defense, and he used Russell Wilson at quarterback. The whole idea behind this play is that you're assuming one team's going to blow out another play, and their players will get a ton of fantasy points as a result. It's a little bit risky, but I really like the fact he targeted the Baltimore Ravens' weak secondary in this game. He used all the Seahawks passing game. He used their quarterback. This can lead to big days. You need that team to blow out the other one, but I really like the way he targeted the Seahawks in this game, because with Jimmy Clausen starting at quarterback, the Baltimore Ravens didn't have much chance. Looking ahead, if you want to employ the same kind of domination play next week, the New England Patriots, as I already mentioned, they're going to be at home versus the very weak Tennessee Titans. that could be definitely a spot where you can employ this play. The other thing he did is he did use the Seahawks defense with Tyler Lockett. You get that double dip correlation play as we mentioned last week too. Tyler Lockett's involved in the return game, and now he's very involved in the Seahawks offense. He didn't have a return touchdown in this game, but he did have a big game passing wise, which just goes to show you that if you target those wide receivers who do both, who are part of the offense and a part of the return game, that you can still get a big game even if they don't get you the return touchdown. So next week, I think you can stay on this play. I think Tyler Lockett and the Seahawks defense versus the Cleveland Browns, very good play. So just in closing, guys, the 3 main points that we went over. Don't be afraid to use those OPRK rankings or those offense versus position stats to help you identify good matchups for your wide receivers. Target those defense who've been giving up a lot of points to wide receivers when you're making your choices. Don't be afraid to target players, I should say, that are coming off of bad weeks, especially talented players like an Eddie Lacy, who's in a good matchup and who's proven his fantasy worth in the past. Target those strong Ds at home for sure, especially defenses that have good matchups. Plenty of weaker teams out there right now just playing out the string. So my name's Geoff Ulrich, guys. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheFantasyGrind. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to DKTV after you check out this video, and good luck in Week 15. We'll talk to you again next week.